go. There you go. Hello, everyone. This is again Yusuf Haji. I already introduced myself. I want to for those that don't know, I want to introduce one of my favorite state legislature from one side of my Burnsville, and also representing Savage, Representative Jess Hanson. Welcome, Jess.
Thanks so much for having me. It's nice to see you.
Yes. Welcome. I am going to go straight to the point. And I know you had a long day. You were at the house. You just arrived. Hectic day, doing a lot of legislation work. And thank you for that, by the way. And thank you for being on the side of the right moment of history. You know, and you will be counted on as one of the few people that stood up for the right thing. And I appreciate every work you put in every day at the state legislature. My question to you, and basically we had already brought this issue up between you and I. We have raised it a little bit, but we're going to be talking about the freeway dump redevelopment. And I just wanted to know, what can you tell our audience about this? What is going on here that our audience might want or might be interested in knowing about the 35W freeway dump redevelopment issue that is ongoing?
Yeah. So in Burnsville, we host a number of landfills, some that are actively being used, some that are not actively being used, some that are lined underneath the trash, between the earth and the trash, some that are not. And as the science and the just environmental science around this sort of thing has evolved over time, there's been new realizations about what's best for the environment around these particular sites. And there's been a variety of ways that landfills have been addressed statewide for a number of years. Obviously, we've always had landfills, and so we've always had to address them in one way, shape, or form. But in this particular site's case, this is located on the east side of 35W, right as you're leaving Burnsville, or the west side, the left side and the east side as you're entering Burnsville. And right now there's a golf driving range that's there, so you've probably seen that before. And underneath that driving range is trash from a long time ago. And there's really detailed information on the MPCA's website, which is the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And so what they do is they look at potential environmental issues that are caused by a lot of things statewide, whether that be pesticide runoff from agriculture farming, or that Roundup you spray in your yard to get rid of the dandelions that the pollinators actually really need. So just want to plug No Mow May and try to keep as many of our pollinator-friendly flowers out there as we can. But they handle a lot of really keeping track of what we need to know as people of Minnesota for what's potentially threatening our environment from a pollution angle. And this particular site has a very, very detailed report on the MPCA website. So if you want the nitty-gritty science details, definitely look at that.
And I'm gonna shoot a question. Just being on that point, and the question is, the development, whoever wants to develop that part of that project that they have in mind, they are proposing to cap the waste instead of removing it. Do you believe that is a safe long-term solution for our community?
It doesn't really matter what I believe, right? My job as a politician is to amplify the voice of my community. I follow the science. That tends to be where I personally go with this. And that's important for a lot of people for a number of reasons. But in this particular case, the community wants this to be cleaned up because there's a lot of uncertainty with it. So that tends to be like the dominant, opinion of people as I was door knocking, and I'm sure you saw this when you were door knocking as well, that people have a lot of questions about this particular site. So that MPCA report is really helpful in just educating folks about the science of what's happening around that site. I think it gets dangerous when we start to say what I believe is the scientific thing to do, and I'm not a scientist, so I want to stay in my lane there, but I do defer to the experts who know what they're talking about. And in this particular case, cleaning up this site is what MPCA has recommended prior to any development happening. Now, I've met with the property owners, right? I've met with the folks who are running some of the ads we see across the community, and they're coming from a place of wanting to understand how to kind of bridge the gap here and how do we get past or through this particular thing. So the challenge is that there's nobody in Burnsville, elected or not, who can override this finding that says that any development has to be preceded by cleanup first. And it's a quite expensive project. I've carried bills in the legislature for a bonding bill to help pitch in some taxpayer dollars to help pay for that, so it's not solely on the property owner to do that. There's, some contingencies with that, and that's not up for discussion this year. That's not something I've pursued at the request of the city. It wasn't on their legislative agenda this year. It has been in the past, though. And so finding what to do next, I think, is really incumbent on us as electeds to listen to the community. And that's what I really default to. And that's what I've talked with the property owner about as well, who came and met with me at the state capitol, and it was a great meeting, and I'm really, really grateful that I finally got a chance to chat with him. But we're on about the same page, is understanding how do we bridge the gap between wanting to develop that property and maybe put what I call like a millennial country club on the property,
right.
Which is like pickleball and some other things like that. But it's all paid, and for, it's not like a free community resource. It's a private entity that would own that. And how do we balance that with the environmental concerns or just the community concerns that people have?
And speaking of community concerns, and that is what I wanted to really to touch on, the proposal as all the conversation between the owner, you all as a state legislature, and then there's a third component of us, the community, everybody that lives here, call that space home. And so many residents, they feel they have been left out of this conversation. Do you feel that way, or what steps can we or shall be taken to ensure the public is meaningfully included in this conversation around this project?
Yeah, and that's been why I jumped into the comment section on a lot of the ads that have been being run in Burnsville, because I started to notice that some of the comments and the way it was being portrayed wasn't really leading our community to a place of truth, or at least it was creating confusion, right? I'm not saying that they're outright lying about anything. I want to be really clear about that, but it left a lot of people wondering when they say, what's so toxic? And people know that the MPCA has this report out there, and now they're wondering, has it been cleaned up? Has it not? And that's the questions a lot of people have. So I think that we as elected officials have an obligation to amplify the voices of our communities. That's literally a politician's whole job. So that's what I've been trying to do. And it took me going into the comment sections of these videos to start to say some of those things. And so that as people see them, they can see that there is a lot more to the conversation that's been going on and that needs to continue to be had in order to address everybody's concerns. One thing I'll say right out the gate is that this is not affecting our drinking water. And that's right this second, it is not drinking our drinking water here in Burnsville, and Savage also gets their water from a similar nearby well. We in Burnsville have a water treatment plant that we are working to get replaced, and so it is important that we fund that, and we've really focused our energy on getting that water treatment plant replaced, but it doesn't alleviate the concerns that people have about what about in the future. And so there's a mine nearby that's currently pumping the water table down, and people are concerned, what happens when that pump goes off? Is the water table going to rise? Some of the trash, at least at Freeway Dump, is already sitting in groundwater, so there is a crossover between trash and water already happening. But that's not where we get our drinking water right this second. And so that's important to know. The secondary piece of this, though, is that the Minnesota River flows into the Mississippi River, though, where millions of people get their drinking water, both in Minnesota and all the way down to the Gulf. So we have to be good stewards of our water. And to be a Minnesotan is to be a good steward of water, because we have some of the largest freshwater reserves in the world. And it's important that we protect those as best as we can as the science evolves. The legislature passed really great protections around PFAS cleanup and like what products are allowed anymore, because they were contributing to PFAS and other types of toxins that end up in our waterways. But we can do more, and we have to keep doing that. And so addressing the concerns that folks have about the future of access to drinking water downstream is a really, really big part of this argument.
As you and I know, for us, it's about people. It's not about profit.
Yeah.
And, I can be biased on my podcast on some of these issues because I truly feel strongly about them, and you are, and some people might say you're asking questions that is maybe probably favorable, but it's favorable to our communities. That's how I feel. I personally, that's how I feel. Yes, some of us might feel different about that, but this project is about financial interest at the end of the day. How do we make sure that community health isn't sidelined in favor of profits?
That's arguably the biggest reason why I really started inserting myself, what some would call pretty aggressively, into this conversation, because I think it's fair that people have questions and people want to be included in the process of this. And so my point was to kind of get the attention of the property owner and the marketing company and their lobbyists at the Capitol, and to make sure we had a relationship so that we could talk about those concerns, so I could be the microphone that's amplifying the voices of folks right around here. I will say that the property owner he's been around here for many, many years. My great-grandfather had a business here in the community when I was a kid, and long before I was even a thought, for decades. And so my roots go very, very deep here in the community, as far as deep in time. And so he was around the community then too. So he's not new around here. And I want that to be really, really clear. He does care about making sure people's voices are included, and making sure that we're trying to bridge that gap. And so I was, like I said, really glad to meet with him. He sent me a really nice thank you card recently, and we'll be meeting again too. So I think facilitating that relationship with elected officials in the local region here is really, really important. Now, that particular site is Representative Liz Ryer's district. The district lines are kind of like a Bermuda Triangle right there at Cliff and 35.
I know it very well. I know
yeah,
it very well,
so... Yes. It's kind of an interesting area. So Representative Liz Ryer represents where the freeway dump and the driving range is right now. Representative Caleb Berg represents right across Cliff Road. Once you get, the Cliff Road's kind of the separator, so Walmart and all of that over there. And then I am on the other side of 35, where there's another landfill that we can talk about at some point too, but is the freeway landfill, which is different than the freeway dump. So I am on the west side of 35, and Representative Liz Ryer and Caleb Berg are on the east side of 35. And so...
And moving forward, again, and this is not the only place. We have a lot of the same issues just spread out across Minnesota. As a state legislature working, are there any state level policies you think should be re-examined or we need to go back to when it comes to building on contaminated site like this one?
There's been no proposals for changes to law right now that I've heard at all. I think there was some kind of a request that honestly circumvented me that was a little bit frustrating, right? Because in politics, kind of the golden rule, if you will, is that the representatives for a particular neighborhood or community are the ones who should be included in any conversations about projects in that community. It is kind of like Minnesota political blasphemy to overstep and to step into somebody else's community and try to have those conversations. And unfortunately, two of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle did engage in that. And it's unfortunate, but I think we could all kind of say, I maybe do the same thing when I carry bills about prove it first and like mining things, or when folks in the Twin Cities area carry bills about the boundary waters or about fresh water, big bodies of fresh water, or the lake back bill that Red Lake Nation is really working on with Upper and Lower Red Lake. So that does happen sometimes, but it's just not very typical. So that was something we had to navigate. And thankfully, I've got a great relationship with the MPCA and with our commissioner there, who was sure to clue me in and copy me on the email response to that. Now, I don't know what letter went to them from these other representatives. Unfortunately, they didn't fill me in on that, but that's okay. They're welcome to ask questions and that. So having that good relationship with MPCA has been important. But as of this time, I met with MPCA just a few weeks ago. There's no legislation on the table right now that seeks to lift any of those protections that they have in place or anything. So at this point in time, according to state law as it stands, nothing can be redeveloped on this particular property unless and until there is a cleanup that MPCA oversees and is a part of. And so That's the state agency that's really in charge of this. And that's part of my job, right? Part of my job is to help my constituents, whether they be business owners or neighbors or whatever it might be, navigate relationships with state agencies. And so I'm happy to do that for this business owner, just like I would for any other business owner or constituent or neighbor who needed that. I facilitated relationships, with our federal partners for folks who had questions about immigration, whether it was their own personal state of affairs or status, or somebody overseas who they had been really struggling with the process. So we address all sorts of interrelated issues, if you will, with different state and federal agencies all the time. That's a pretty core part of my job.
Excellent. And so for those who don't know, MPC means Minnesota Pollution Control.
Yes.
And that is the state agency in charge of whatever the outcome is going to be about this project. They are the ones that are spearheading that.
Yes.
And so I'm going to ask you some other questions that are not related to the dump, but we will get to that. But what I want to ask you is, what is the message? What are your messages to the people of Burnsville who are watching or will watch this about this proposal that everyone is closely watching, and are they either hopeful or deeply concerned about it? What do you think of that?
I think it's important to interact with the ads that you're seeing on Facebook. I will say that the marketing company that the property owner works with has been really responsive there. You'll see in some of those comments where I push back a little bit and kind of ask more questions, because I know that those are questions that folks have on their minds. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. I think they're earnest and they want to engage, but also remembering that they really want to redevelop this property too. The current property owner's dad put everything he had into starting this. This was a business he started back, I think it was the 60s or 70s, if I remember right. And it's a family business. And so we want to respect that. We've always been a community that supports family-owned businesses, especially ones that have been here a long time, and that they're our neighbors too. I believe the property owner even maybe did business with my great-grandfather at one point in time. We kind of chatted about that a little bit when we met. So I think engaging there is important. Also keeping an eye on any events that they have. There was an event last summer that unfortunately wasn't maybe advertised as well as it maybe could have been, where there was some questions answered, and some discussions had, but there'll be another one. I believe they said I haven't actually officially gotten the invite, unfortunately, though they said they will send it to me, but I believe it's on June 14th at one of the restaurants nearby. So they should be hosting something there. Those are the kinds of things you want to get involved in. I don't know that they have an email address or an easy way to contact them, but they do have a website. And so you can usually contact them through their website if you have questions about that. I will say, however, that as you'll see in the comments I've made, sometimes the responses are missing the level of detail or information that people are looking for. So for example, someone said, "How can I help get this done? I want to help. What can I do?" And the response was, contact the mayor and the city council. And I can't let people be misled about politics and government, because that would be a futile attempt. The city council nor the mayor can override MPCA any more than I can. But what we can do is we can have conversations and facilitate discussions to try to find a better place to land. But that the law is the law is the law is the law. And like I said, there's no laws on the table right now being proposed to change anything. So
do you think directing people to the city council and the mayor, is that, are they looking to see if they're going to get a favorable outcome? Is that why they're doing that? Or what do you think?
I think my understanding of the city's official position, as far as it's been voted on, as a whole city, is that they support the concept after the cleanup is done, right? And they're not going to support anything that's in violation of state law either. So our city is very good about that. They're very well informed about the proper steps to do. We've been a city that's been developing consistently for 50, 60, 70 years, and we are good at understanding what can happen and what can't, and how does development go. We have a lot of businesses here, big industrial businesses, tiny small businesses, and so we have a good relationship with the business community. However, like I said, the city council nor the mayor can override MPCA. It doesn't hurt to let all of your elected officials know how you feel about something. I only say that as a way to remind us that effective advocacy matters too, and I don't want you to be wasting your time if you're taking time to do that. If you want to go direct to the most direct source, that's going to be the property owners who need to comply with what MPCA has recommended, or work with them to come up with a brand new solution if that's what we need to do. I don't know that part, but I'm there to kind of be in the middle and help negotiate that as best I can, really just with integrity and to be transparent with the public and not leave anybody behind, because a big part of what I've heard is that people just don't feel like they're being included.
My last question I want to ask you, has nothing to do with what you're talking about. It's about the 35W freeway, more likely the closure of Burnsville Parkway and the construction. I've been watching on social media, people are just going off on this project. I know it's at the end, I know it's beneficial. It's collectively beneficial to all of us residents of Burnsville, but people are feeling the pain from social medias that I'm reading, people who are making comments. Can you give us, I know you're probably not in that transportation committee.
Yeah.
You probably know somebody who is in there. What's the conversation like with the state legislature? Has this complaint reached you, Kyla, and Liz, and hopefully Senator Liz Import? Can you give us a little bit on that?
So the construction is a pain. I live right by Southern Lights, the big light store right on 13 and 35. I live in the neighborhood right there, so I am quite literally in the heart of both landfills and construction, and I've been in the heart of that for a long time. So watching this area develop over the course of my lifetime has been interesting, right? I remember when Highway 13 there was a Ferris wheel and a little amusement park over there, and a Taco Bell and a Famous Dave's. That's the days I remember when my house that I own now bumped right up to the highway before there was a sound wall and all of that. So I've definitely seen a lot of the transitions and changes here. So I know the pain we've been through for many moons, especially all the way down 13 into Savage, right outside the ports of Savage there, which I think we can all agree that was painful too, but it is far safer to drive over there now. So the construction projects here we're seeing on the intersection of 35W and Cliff Road, 35W and 13, both north and south of 13, directions of 13, and 35W and Burnsville Parkway, and then 35W, well, I guess the split, right, down at Buck Hill Road. It is hard, and I know it is really hard to navigate to get around town right now. I go to Caribou, and and my son goes to Nicollet, so usually I can just hop over the bridge, and it takes me less than 5 minutes to get to Nicollet and the Parkway. Now it takes me about 25 minutes, so it is definitely hard, and it's something to adapt to. The alternative, however, though, is like what you're seeing on 494 and 35, where it's been 10 years of construction. And our corridor cannot take 10 years of construction at that level, and I don't think that's what our community wants. It's something like 50,000 cars. I have it written down somewhere, but something like 50,000 cars a day come up and down the 13 corridor. We're a corridor of commerce. 10% of the nation's grain travels down 13 from the ports of Savage, and so much of our commerce and products, couches, furniture, heavy equipment comes through the ports there. So the ports are like a quiet but mighty part of our economy here, and they largely are when we have big business like that, that's a big part of what helps keep property taxes down and a lot of other things when we have thriving business. For example, just look at Prior Lake, who does not have that kind of a business footprint like we do in Burnsville and Savage. And it's harder. Those property taxes are different, and they're calculated different out there because of the difference of the ratio of business to residential. So it's a good thing that we have lots of business, but we need to accommodate all of that business by making sure our roads and bridges are there. The legislature invested $1 billion of the surplus money into our roads and bridges. We were at a D- on some of our most traveled roads as far as a grading system, which was among the worst in the nation. And as the state where 35W collapsed and people lost their lives and people's lives were forever changed, we have to be conscious that we cannot ever let anything like that happen again. So these investments are necessary. I'm not saying the bridges would have fallen or anything like that, but we just have to be proactive. So the construction will go on until October. If these projects were done individually, the estimate is that this would be drawn out to anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And I don't think that's what folks really would want to have in our area. So October it is. Once we get through that, we'll kind of get to go back to normal, hopefully as fast as possible. But I will say you're going to love the 42 and Buck Hill Road.
So basically, we were given red and a blue pill, and we're to pick one.
Which one do you want?
Which one you want? This one.
Yeah. And I didn't greenlight that. I didn't make those decisions. I want to be really clear. That wasn't me who made those choices.
You're saying something about the outcome. The outcome, as you said, it's going to be amazing. You said it's going to be beautiful.
Buck Hill Road and that whole intersection, that frontage road kind of down by the mall there, as we make sure that the mall gets redeveloped and more traffic comes through there and we have more transit and options like that, the changes that you'll see on Buck Hill Road are going to be, you'll like them. I think that it's going to be a lot different, but a lot more easier to traverse that area by the movie theater and TGI Fridays there and the collision place over there, all of the car dealerships. It's going to be better. And especially the mall. Once that gets hustling and bustling again, could you imagine if we added as much mall traffic as we used to have 20 years ago here onto 42 during rush hour as it is today? It would probably be really worse, So drive careful. Use an abundance of caution. My daughter had somebody pull out in front of her, and so we're dealing with a car accident claim now. And she slammed on her brakes fast enough, but it's really important that we have defensive driving right now and understand that we do need to take our time. It's not worth anybody losing their life. You're never in that much of a hurry. Your life is always more valuable. And thankfully, my daughter responded quickly, because had she not, I don't think she would be with us today. So I'm really thankful for that. But it's hard because, people are in a rush to pull into the Target parking lot when 42 is backed up, and you cannot go just because traffic is stopped. There are 3 lanes. You have to look at all of them and not cross them just because you're in a rush, right? So the other thing I've been talking about is do the zipper, right? On 13 especially. It is not budging or cutting off. If somebody goes all the way up to where the line starts to curve over, that actually makes traffic move the most efficiently. My Facebook page, I posted a maybe 15-year-old quirky, funny video about doing the zipper merge. But we do need to make sure we're letting people have that and having a courtesy for that too.
I think safety is important. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry about that. I didn't even know about that. Sorry.
She'll be okay. Thankfully she's going to be.
So sometime in the future, you are going to be on this show telling us what is next for Representative Jess Hanson. You don't have to say it now, but the doors are open for you. I think you got the it. I have told you that before, and I'm telling you right now, you got it. I see I see the future bright for you, and I see the lights at the end of the tunnel. We have a lot more to discuss, and hopefully, if we're not able to go through them tonight, we will probably have to do it some other time. That's anytime I know you can come on this podcast. Yeah. This is the Third Take podcast, and we are for those who are joining us right now, we are with Representative Jess Hanson. I know you're a big fan of the Timberwolves. I know a few times, I know you've gone out, watched the games. Yes. How about the Timberwolves? Can you tell us?
It's been so great. I've been watching them. I think the best part is that Lakers in 5 didn't come true, right? So T-Wolves in 5 was the best outcome. I'm loving Anthony Edwards and his attitude about all of this. I think just the whole team dynamic between Nas and everybody is just it is so great to see them have so much fun and to work so hard and to just bring so much excitement. I think they said, one of the teams had said, they got to play in Minnesota. They're so loud there. So keep howling, keep making all the noise, because clearly that makes a difference. I got to sit down kind of by the court side for the first time in my life. I've been a lifelong Timberwolves fan and never got to sit on the lower level ever before. So that was pretty exciting and get to see everybody right up close. So I'm really rooting for them and cheering for them and hoping that we can really bring this home.
The sitting at the front court is on my bucket list.
It was
especially I was thinking about it. Yes, I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was like, I'm gonna have to convince my wife that I want to sit up in front. So I was thinking what I was going to wear if I am gonna sit at the front court, and so I'm still going through that process of thought of how do I do this, because I want to do it uniquely. I want to do it differently. I just don't want to, if I'm going to spend, I'm going to spend money to sit at the best possible position I can sit in. I want everybody to know. I want the national media to capture me sitting there, unique, looking different from everybody else, you know. I just don't want to go there and sit there and just be like, no. I want to go and be like, I'm on the spotlight. Who is this guy sitting at the front court, you know? So hopefully that will come. Yeah.
I wore all red because I was downing my like Lower Sioux off the path dispensary from Lower Sioux, red sweatshirt, and I stuck out like a sore thumb, and you could like really see me on the cameras and stuff. And I wasn't really planning on it. I didn't really know. A friend asked me at last minute to join. Hey, a business got canceled. Do you want to come with? He's like one of my best friends. And so I went, and it was just such an exciting thing. I like couldn't really grasp what was happening. 50 Cent was there, just not too far away. We got to go back into like the the buffet area back there. So it was pretty cool to get to do that.
Thank you, Jess. For next time, I know we got to talk about, I'm watching the NBA playoffs. Right now, the Denver Nuggets are playing Oklahoma City, and I just got done watching Celtics lose to New York. It was really nice game. So next, I'm going to hop on that game, Denver playing Oklahoma City. I'm going to get on my treadmill, set it up right now. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes. We'll have you back anytime. I'd love to do like legislative updates. I'll kind of give you some inside tips about what's happening at the Capitol. We've got a lot happening there.
We're going to do it once a week on this show. We're going to do this.
I'm here for it.
We might even invite, sometimes invite Representative Keller or invite Liz Ryers to join us on this conversation.
I talked to both of them. They are very excited to join sometime and talk more about these issues. And I hope I could get them tonight, but we just ran out of time.
No worries. I understand. You guys are hard to find, especially when the session is on. It's really tough, you know. I don't even get some replies sometimes, but I'm glad you did, and you got back to me, and we're here. We're going to continue having this great conversation how we can make our collective community better here in Burnsville and also for the state of Minnesota. I mean, this is home. And we have to have the heart. Thank you so much for joining me again. I hope to see you next week sometimes. We're going to plan that and see if we can continue this. Thank you so much.
Give me a follow. I try to post things every once in a while. I get a little busy sometimes, but every once in a while you'll get a 2 a.m. when I have time video out of me, just kind of giving you some information about what's happening at the Capitol and what I think of it. You can always count on me to be authentic because I think that politics is how we care about each other and we deserve a responsible government. And so that's the kind of politics I engage in. And I invite as many people as possible to join me in that. And let's just keep fighting back and fighting for ourselves and each other.
Thank you so much. That was Representative Jess Hanson
joining
us today here on our live podcast. Thank you so much. This is That Take again. I'll see you guys next week. Same time on Tuesday. Bye-bye.